Hello, hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space. And a couple of thank you cards using the Simon Says Stamp Friendship Leafy Cluster bundle. You can get it as a bundle. Everything's available individually. There's a stamp set, a die set, and a stencil set. And this came out in their Sweetheart release, which was like early January. And it's just been sitting here waiting. Got so many ideas for this set. Anyway, I went rainbow again because who doesn't love a good rainbow? They're fun. However, instead of using like a whole bunch of inks to get like a rainbow blend, I just used three inks to get a fun rainbow blend. And then of course I added like splatter and a background stamp and twine and bling. You guys know. I'm getting comments now about people saying that they can spot the kitchen sink there hiding in my cards. And I'm like, pretty much, man. So, anywho, as always, links to everything I used will be in the description box below the video, as well as a link to my website, my socials, all the things. And then keep watching, and I'll show you guys how I made these cards. So I started with some panels of A2 smooth white cardstock. This is just Simon's smooth white cardstock. My go-to cardstock, really. I use this pretty much all the time. And I had the wafer dies out because I was like, just thinking. I wasn't 100% sure where these cards were going to go. But I was like, if I figure out my layout, I'll show... after they're done, like being ink blended and whatnot, it's like this could have been a clean and simple card. Do I do clean and simple? Hardly ever. I can't help myself. I love clean and simple. I love how it looks. I love the makers that just master that. Me, you guys know, I like to add everything. So I did 2 panels. Although the way I had this set up, you could just, if you needed to like mass produce a bunch of cards, this would totally work. But I had my stamps arranged. And then I used my anti-static powder tool on these panels. That just keeps the embossing powder from clinging to anything but the stamped image. And then I'd stick the panels into my MISTI, inked up the stamps with clear embossing ink, stamped them, coated them with Simon's Detail Gold embossing powder, tapped off the excess, and then put that lid back on my container so that I don't flip it over. You make these little habits for a reason. Because more than anything, embossing powder is the worst trying to clean up. It's just that gritty texture too. Ugh. Anyway, melting it is the best part. It's not as obvious in this video because these are fine line images, but like I always say, it will never get old melting embossing powder, especially metallic. It's magical. So once everything was smooth and melted, I stuck these to my grip mats because of course I have more than one. Do you need more than one? No. I do. I do things like this, and it's that convenience thing. Anyway, it's holding my cardstock, and then it holds the stencil. And I'm using the coordinating stencils. And like I've been talking about a lot lately, when I do anything rainbow, I start with yellow. And in this case, I'm specifically starting with yellow because I'm planning on purposely blending the other 2 colors into the yellow to create more colors. So I want to start with yellow because I don't want to pick up the pink or the blue on my yellow blending brush. Always. Yellow is just the easiest. It's the lightest. It's the easiest contaminated. And the other 2 colors, they'll be fine. Like what little yellow they're going to pick up from the stencil when I do the blending, they're fine. It's not going to do anything. So I blended, and I'm using Simon's Positively Saturated inks for this. And I'm using Sunbeam ink as my first ink. And this stencil set, it's a set of 2 stencils, and it's got both the sizes on there. And it's done in such a way that you could do all this technically with just 1 shade of ink, and it's going to look pretty. But this is where I'm just like, but why 1? Let's do rainbow. But I do like that. It's like, ooh, you could just layer the pieces or do just 2 shades, 2 similar shades, like 2 shades of green or 2 shades of like aqua blue or purple, like whatever floats your boat, Anyway, I did the yellow first, as you can see. Just blend it on there and went pretty wide with it because I'm blending the other two colors into it, which are Peony and Surf. So a pink and a blue. And blending, pulling those further in are going to create green and orange. So with the three colors, I'm able to get a nice little rainbow. And if I wanted to take it one step further, I could have taken the blue and the pink on the very, very ends on each end and start creating a bit like a purple, but I didn't bother. I was happy with where this all went, and it was just fun seeing it all start to come together, because at first, like with just the yellow, it's like, okay, we'll see if this works. And then, you know, by this point, I'm like, this is working. This is fun. I'm liking how this is. And like I always mention with these inks, they do smooth out more. They dry back, so they soften a bit. They lighten a bit as they dry, but they also, the big one is they soften. So this is why I love these inks, because they blend like a dream. And even if my blends aren't perfect, by the time everything's dry, it kind of looks perfect. Like, perfection is overrated, 100%. Like, full stop, perfection is overrated. This is crafting, this is handmade, and none of this is going in the Louvre. I'm not worried about it. But I do love me products that make me look super awesome. You know, that I'm better at things than I actually am. So anything that gives me a shortcut, I'm all for it. So these inks being one of those. So I just kept going back and forth, as you can see, and doing my bit of blending. But you know, by the time you get to the end of it, it's just like, oh, this is fun. And this is where this could be kept clean and simple. Like, this could be your card front. You could add a little sentiment strip and be done. And it would look great. Or stamp a little sentiment. It would look great, you know, because you got the heat embossing, you've got the fun blending. It totally could. Just looking at this now in editing, I was like, man, I could have done it. But I also couldn't have, because that's just not where my brain goes. So I use the coordinating wafer dies, die cut these. And then for my background, I pulled out my oldie but goodie favorite that I don't even bother putting in the package half the time. This is the thank you text. Yeah, the thank you text background stamp. I've used this one a million times. And I just put it face up on my work surface here. And I have more just A2 size panels of cardstock, as well as my card bases. And I inked it up with just a really pale ink. This is Concord 9th Pebble ink. And same thing. These inks, very similar to the Positively Saturated inks in just the formula, how they smooth out, etc. So this ink as well will like dry back and soften. So I stamped that onto what will be the card fronts, and then I put some of my trusty, very used Post-it tape on the insides of my cards right at the score line. My cards will be top folding A2 white note cards, and I put the Post-it tape there so that I don't stamp past the score line, and then stamped this background stamp onto what will be the inside of both of these cards. So just inked it up, pressed it down, wasn't worried about getting it perfect. And then technically the insides could be done, but I was like, but what if I inked up these stamps with those three colors and did it rainbow as well? So why not? So I left the stamps like in my MISTI in the same position. So I just stuck the inside of the card into my MISTI. And then to ink up the stamps, I'm just using my little pint-sized paper pouncers, because that'll kind of transfer the ink, but it also, because these are dye inks, it won't be as intense. Usually I'll do like oxide inks with things like the pouncers. I've even done it with blending brushes, etc. And oxide inks will sit more on top of the tool, on top of the stamp, etc. So with this, if you want a more intense impression with your stamp, you will just have to do it multiple times, because you're not pressing the ink pad directly to the stamp. I'm, using just the little pouncer, but that's perfect because one, it blends them, and two, it makes it just a bit softer, because I don't want intense color on the inside of the card, because I'm going to write, right over that. So like I always do though, I started with the yellow, because I don't want to get a bunch of colors in my little pouncer brushes. I did end up getting a little bit on this, second run through, but not so much that I consider the little yellow pouncers like, it's fine. It's fine. It's not a big deal. So I stamped the insides with that. And then my card fronts, I decided to trim down. I took like a 1/4 inch off each side. So these ended up being like 3 3/4 by 5 inches. So use my guillotine trimmer to trim those down. And then I'm going to adhere these clusters with just thin foam squares. So it gives it a little bit of dimension, but there's not going to be a whole lot of bulk. So once I get these popped into place, this is where the splatter comes in. I wanted these adhered first, and then I'm going to put these in my splat box. And then I'm going to use my Gonzai Tombi Starry watercolors. And I'd already put water in that last well there, and let it sit for about a minute, and then swirl it up really, really good with my little fan brush. And then I'm going to splatter these backgrounds. And again, you could stop here. You could skip the splatter altogether. I know some people don't like it. That's fine. It would be really boring if we all liked the exact same things. So I added the splatter because I like it. So I splattered these fairly heavily. You know, the gold is, it's pretty. And then I'm going to add black splatter, which really freaks people out. But there's something about black splatter. I love it. However, I went light-handed with this. You know, I wasn't going like super, super intense. So I used my black soot distress paint, shook it up, put it on my palette, and then just a lighter hand, just gentle taps on my brush. I'm not trying to just cover everything. I just wanted that little bit of black because I am going to heat emboss my sentiments on black cardstock. And I also wanted to add some black and white baker's twine. So this black splatter just kind of ties it all together. That was my justification for it. Do I need justification? No, but that's what my thought process was. So speaking of the sentiments, I'm using sentiments from that Friendship Leafy cluster set. I love the sentiments in this set, especially like the mix of fonts. I love this little handwritten font for the main like thanks word, etc. And then there's just a bunch of buildable phrases, which I've talked about this many times in videos. I love options like that, you know, because it gives you more bang for your buck, in my opinion. So I did the exact same thing as I did in the beginning. I used my anti-static powder tool, stamped the sentiments with clear embossing ink, coated them with that same gold embossing powder, melted that with my heat tool, which is a little more satisfying on black because you can actually seeing it melt. Love. And then let that cool down. And I used just my little microfiber cloth to wipe away that excess anti-static powder. Once I got that out of there, I used the coordinating wafer die to die cut the thanks word. And then for the little like companion part of the sentiment, I just used one of my sentiment label wafer dies and then just tape those into place so they don't shift when I run this through my die cut machine. So die cut my sentiments and then pulled out my baker's twine and yeah, just kind of tucked this under because I didn't put any foam tape or anything under the stems of these clusters because I just couldn't be bothered. I was like, no, they're fine. So wrapped the baker's twine around, kind of tucked it underneath, and then tied that in a bow. And as always, reverse tweezers, absolute must have for all the things with crafting and whatnot, but especially for stuff like this. And yeah, I get comments about this a lot. They're like, you make it look so easy. 20 years plus of tying bows. You know, it gets easy when you do hundreds, if not thousands. I have no idea how many bows I've tied, you know, because that used to be my thing way back in the day with card making is like every card had ribbon, you know, every card. Anyway, tied that in a bow, trimmed off the excess on the little tails, did that to the second card. And then to adhere my sentiments, I used a tiny little bit of foam squares. I've talked about this. I do not like, you know, cutting little narrow strips and making sentiments float. I only did it for this because I only needed it in 2 spots, like just right along the bottom of the front of the sentiment and then one little spot in the middle. That's it. Just needed that little extra strength because it's kind of hanging over this leaf cluster. So I put the little foam squares there and then the rest was just craft tacky glue. And then I just cut a couple little foam squares in half to stick that little companion sentiment underneath there. So it says thanks for everything. So got those adhered into place. And then I trimmed down some black cardstock to slightly bigger than this card front panel and adhered those together with craft tacky glue. And then I'm going to adhere these to the card base with craft tacky glue. And then once these are adhered into place, I pulled out some Stay Gold sequins. They're just little gold confetti from Simon. And yeah, just also ties together the little gold elements on these cards. So I figured out where I wanted to place these, kind of tucked them in here and there. Once I was kind of happy with the placement I decided on, copy that on the second card. And then I'm just going to adhere these into place with little dabs of craft tacky glue. Just using my little embellishment wand to pick them up, put down a dot of glue, stick that into place, repeat on the second card. Once that's done, these cards are complete. So like I said in the intro, I will have links to all the things in the description box below the video. You can just expand it. There'll be the supply list, link to my website, link to my socials, all the things. So you can just check that out below if you're interested. Thank you all so very much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping and commenting. It really does help because it tells the robot overlords, aka the algorithms, that you guys like what you're seeing. You know, I'm at the mercy of the robots. So I very much appreciate it. And if you haven't subscribed, I'd love to have you. And I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.